Silverback Chronicles podcast. It's your boy Big H. I got my brother Drake.
What's up, Coloque?
We're here. What's going on?
Chilling, my brother. Happy to be here.
Triple C.
Yo.
What's up, baby?
Maintaining and chilling, bro.
Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you. We love you. We got a special guest here tonight. This man is amazing at what he does. He did over 42 years of service, helping, guiding, teaching. I can't speak enough about him, but ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, our special guest tonight, Mr. Shannon Bohrer. What's up, sir?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks
I
for having
appreciate
us. Thanks. Well, thank you for coming by.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I really
Sure.
do.
So, Mr. Bohrer, why law enforcement for you? Why get started in it?
I was going to college, of course, this is in the 60s, and I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. I don't know why. It just seemed like a nice thing to do. You know, when you're young, you want to be a cowboy or a fireman or whatever. And one of my coaches said, you know, the state police are getting helicopters. Maybe you should look to go to them, because I thought after I got to college, I'd join the Army and become a pilot. So instead, I did join the state police, and I've never learned to fly helicopters. But that's how that's how it came to be.
That's how it came to be.
And once I started studying the law enforcement topics in college, I really became engaged in it. In other words, it's if you sit in a class that you don't like, your mind travels a lot.
Absolutely.
And if you sit in a class you like, you pay attention. And that I started paying attention with that. And that's how I got into it. It was a great career. I did a lot of different things. I feel like it was, I had a lot of purpose with it. And then after I retired, I was offered a job at Quantico at the FBI Academy. I worked there for 4 years. I also worked with the behavioral science unit there on some research that we were doing. I was working on that when I was still with the state police. And then when I came back to Maryland at the training commission, I was there for 11 years and created their range program there. And that was eye-opening. When you work for large police departments, I can assure you that the weapon you have is going to work. And I can assure you that you're going to have good training. But these small departments just get by. And I'll give you an example that we would do an entrance level class for firearms, and you would have like maybe 10, 12 different departments with class 25. And we would ask for their weapons to come in before the class started, 2 weeks. And I had armorers for every weapon, so we would check the weapons out, assemble them, disassemble them, function test them, then take them down to the range and shoot them. Well, inevitably, when we asked for these weapons, we would have maybe 20, 25% that didn't work. And we would tell the agency, and they have to bring another weapon. But I came to realize that a lot of these small agencies never really took care of their weapons. In other words, if you have like 10, 12 people in an agency, you don't have a firearms instructor, you don't have an armor, you just have a gun.
Right.
And I can imagine that the gun sits in a drawer of the chief takes it out, gives it to you and says, take this to training. You fail the firearms, give it back to him. He puts it back in the drawer. He comes in, gives it to him. He fails. I can't get anybody to shoot. No, it's the gun. You know, your equipment doesn't work. And that's the first time I realized it, because the state police, we always had regular maintenance on all our weapons. In fact, I was in charge of that. And at Quantico, they had a whole room full of armors. You know, I mean, and that's just one example of an advantage of a larger department over these real small departments. So it was eye-opening.
Has policing changed in your eyes since you came into it, and then once you retired?
Yes and no.
What was eye-opening for you?
What was eye-opening was the fact that I would say, let me revert once, in business, they say 20% of your customers are 80% of your business.
Okay.
If you look at crime and the people that the police deal with, you deal with 90% of the time you're dealing with the same 10% of the people.
Right.
In other words, it's the same people over and over and over. You know, it's just the way it works. But it's also the same. It's more technical now. But when I went through the State Police Academy, I'll never forget them telling us that you treat everybody like their family. You treat everybody the way you want your family members to be treated. And at the same time, you have a thought in your head of how to do them instantly bodily harm if needed.
Absolutely.
Right.
But you treat them with sir, yes ma'am, respect, that kind of stuff. There was just a side story here. A trooper I know that was fairly new at a barrack. It's a Western barrack, and they gave him a warrant. You had mailboxes, and they would put the warrants in your mailbox or other mail that you had. And you would just take the warrant out, look at the address, and go serve the warrant, bring them to the barrack, process them, and take them to the county jail at the time. Now they have central booking that does that. But so he locks this guy up, and it's a Sunday morning, and when you arrest somebody as a trooper, you drive around to the back of the barrack, and the duty officer meets you at the back to make sure that the prisoner's handcuffed and searched. And then the duty officer sometimes takes your weapon, puts it in a lockbox. So you take the prisoner downstairs because you're going to uncuff him and you don't want the gun there. Well, when he brings the guy up the back steps to the barrack, and he says, see me right away as soon as you put him in the cell. He goes back up, and he says, what did you do and lock him up by yourself? And he says, what do you mean? He says, well, he fought 3 of us a couple months ago. So the trooper, he's young still. He goes downstairs, and he's processing him, fingerprinting and photograph, and he says, duty officer told me you haven't had an altercation with a couple troopers. And he said, yeah. He says, well, why me? Why didn't you? And he says, well, you treated me with respect. A lot of times, I see the human interaction the same that it was then, today. It should be. The technical part today is completely different. You don't write tickets anymore. They're all computer generated, all that stuff. But I do think that human part is the part that we should address all the time. When they talk about police reform, they talk about it as if you're going to take every police officer you have now and retrain them. And I believe the vast majority of officers are good. Not that they can't use more training, but if you really want to reform the criminal justice system, you start at the bottom. When you recruit somebody, you have to do a complete background check. I mean, complete.
I agree.
Then you have to have the best training. And I don't care how good the training is, if the field training officer is no good, you've just lost all the training.
I agree.
If you look at Derek Chauvin, he was on the Floyd's neck for 9 minutes. If you believe what was in the paper, and it probably was true, police are very skeptical about what they read in the paper. Well, everybody is, I guess. But he had 17 valid complaints for excessive force. Why was he a training officer?
Right, exactly. Why was he even on the street?
Yes. And so if you want to reform the police, you start at the bottom with the training, and then you go to the supervision, and that's the field training officer, and then you go to the corporal and sergeant and the administration. In other words, you need to ensure that you're starting with a good product.
Right.
If you want to reduce crime, you have to look at the children today that are 11, 12, 14 years old. And they should have been looked at when they were 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
Somebody doesn't turn 18, then become a criminal.
Yeah.
Well, a police officer, it's like building a house. If you start with a good background check on a good person, and you build a good foundation, now you have a foundation that's good for you. And I think that makes a difference. The criminal justice system needs to work better as a whole. I mean, it really does. There's a lot of holes in the system, you might say.
Now, can we move? Now, I guess why the next thing should be, where did Judicial Soup come from? And this is your book, right?
Yes. Judicial Soup is a story of a innocent person who was found guilty of a crime. The person was Heath Patrick Thomas, and he was 19 years working for the federal government and the ICE, Immigration Custom Enforcement. He was actually a high-ranking officer within that agency, had high security clearances. He was in Bosnia for 5 years. I mean, he traveled the world. He was a coordinator with the CIA and stuff like that. I mean, he was really high up. Well, he was off duty. He's in D.C., and he's carrying a gun. He's on a dinner with his girlfriend and two other couples. After they leave, this was in Georgetown, an historic area. After they leave there, they're walking down the street and they decide to stop for a nightcap. Really not to drink more, but to continue the conversation. You know how it is in a group and you're having a good time.
Yeah.
So they go into this particular bar and they're there for about an hour and a half. And they have 2 rounds of drinks that they've ordered. 2 drinks are made with the wrong alcohol. 2 drinks are spilled, and 1 drink served with a bug in it. So you can say the service is not that good.
Right.
Right.
So his girlfriend says, "Get the check, we're leaving." So he goes to the bar to get the check. At the bar, he can't get service. In other words, he says, "I just want the check. I just want the check." Finally, the one gal goes to the other end to start working on the check. And you can see by the stamp on it, there's 10 minutes difference by the time she stamped it to the time she gets the finished receipt out. And that's not counting the time he's there in front of it. While she's up there, he sees somebody that he believes to be the manager standing at the serving area. And he walks up to him, and the man looks Spanish. And he says, "Do you speak Spanish?" And he says, "Yes." So Heath, wanting a private conversation, speaks Spanish to him, telling him that the service is bad, and now he can't even pay his check. He's complaining because he can't pay his bill. In English, the manager responds, "If you don't like it, I'll call the police." And Heath raises his arm and says, "I am the effing police." And then he turns around real quick and walks to the bar. At the bar, the way he described it, he's hit from the rear. The bouncer grabs him around his arms, picks him up, and carries him out. It's about 40 feet from where he's picked up to where he's dropped off outside. And he's carrying a gun inside his pants. And he can feel the gun, because he's like this, coming loose. As the gun's coming loose, his concern is, as soon as he can, to put it back in the holster. When the bouncer finally drops him, the bouncer really doesn't leave him. There's just all this weight going forward. And he turns to his right, turns his right foot around, you might say, and reaches for the gun to holster it. And the bouncer's right here and grabs the top of the gun and then grabs his waist with his left arm, with his right arm, rather. So now there's a struggle for the gun. The police respond, and they're there in less than 2 minutes, and he drops the gun. And the bouncer says, "I set him down, I backed up 3 feet, and he turned around with a gun in hand." That's what he says. Now, action-reaction models, that happens in the movies, but that doesn't happen in real life.
Mm-hmm.
If 2 people are boxing in a ring, and one throws a punch and the other parries, it blocks the punch. It's expected, right? If the 2 people are walking down the street and one throws a sucker punch, what's going to happen?
You're going to get hit.
You're going to get hit, right? There's the stimulus, the RT, reaction time, and then the reaction. And the reaction time is dependent upon the compatibility with the stimulus. Well, if he wasn't expecting the gun, he couldn't have stopped it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in the courtroom, the defense attorney actually demonstrated that with the bouncer. He turned slowly at the bouncer's direction, and he still couldn't grab the gun. And there was a whole lot of other issues that came up in this trial. Many times they're small things. But if you add these small things together, they take the court in the wrong direction. They really do. There was a witness that the judge paid a lot of attention to, and he was 22 years old. He was a young Marine. He wasn't in uniform. And he backed up everything that the bouncer said. Everything. Said he followed the bouncer carrying Heath out the door. The problem with his statement is the bouncer is carrying Heath. Behind the bouncer is the bar manager, because he's got to open the inside door. Behind the bar manager is Carol, Heath's girlfriend. Then this witness would be there. So he really wasn't there. He just heard it and it became his memory, you might say.
Right.
But he backed up everything, and the judge believed that, which I was really surprised. There was a difference in time of when the crime occurred. The one police officer who picked up the gun or said, "This is the gun here."
So what was the crime? An ag assault by pointing?
Yeah, it was supposed to be assault by pointing a gun at him.
But he didn't point the gun.
No, he never pointed a gun. In fact, the bouncer, Heath testified that when they were struggling for the gun, he, in a very low, calm voice, said, "I'm a police officer. I'm not going to hurt you." The bouncer affirmed that. "I'm a police officer. I'm not going to hurt you."
During testimony?
Yeah. And the bouncer affirmed that. The manager said Heath was cussing up a storm. And he said F. I mean, I'm effing police. And the manager says he said all this, and yet nobody else heard it. Now, he was speaking in Spanish, Heath was. And the waitress said she heard the conversation. And the judge said, "Well, what did he say?" "Well, just what I said. He's like complaining about not having be able to pay the bill and the drinks." There's no cussing in there, nothing. It's almost like the prosecution and the employees in the bar made a pact to find him guilty, and I don't know why. I mean, I really don't know why. But I was with him from the start all the way through the appeal, which was 2013. And I was his expert witness, and I was supposed to testify one day, and the judge had me get down off the stand and go out in the hallway. We're getting ahead of ourselves now. But if you read the transcript, they argued that I shouldn't testify until Heath testifies. Now, in a court case, if you're the defendant, you don't have to testify.
Right.
You don't have to prove your innocence. They have to prove your guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But the expert can testify even if you don't.
Right.
Well, the
Because
judge,
you're the expert of that particular
did not want me
situation.
testifying until Heath testified. Well, I thought to myself, well, if Heath doesn't testify, does that mean I can't testify?
Right.
Then the judge put a whole lot of restrictions or contours on what I could testify to. And I couldn't testify to anything about the gun coming out. I could only testify about the struggle afterwards. Well, that sort of defeats how the gun came out is the case.
Correct.
So I locked up at least 1,000 people in my career, a couple thousand helping other people. I've locked up murderers, rapists, bank robbers. I mean, I've had a very fruitful career. And I've testified in court hundreds of times. I never saw anything like this. And Heath and I would talk by phone all the time. And what I was going to do was going to write an article on it. Well, I write a monthly column for a local newspaper, and I get 30 pages down, and I don't even have a tenth of it down there. And I say, well, that's not going to do. I'm going to have to write a book. And I had written a number of articles in law enforcement, which is why I've been an expert witness before. I never advertised it. People just read the article and say, I need you to testify about this behavior. So eventually I decided that's what I'm going to do, write the book. And when I got permission from Heath to have all the materials, I have 3 banker boxes full of trial transcripts and materials. And it took me 6 months to a year just to go through them, just to find everything out and put it in order. And even after all that time, I would be like, maybe this is year 5 or 6 writing, and I'd pull aside, and I'd find something in between stuff that I didn't know existed, And then I started thinking, nobody wants to read about a police officer that's charged with a crime he didn't commit. That's not going to be a popular topic. So what I did is I looked for other cases that fit with this officer. In other words, things that happened to him that would be in somebody else's case. And I wanted to weave them into the conversation in the book. That didn't look good. It was a great idea, I thought, but once I did it, it didn't. So then I decided to take these cases and just put a summary at the end of each chapter. So as the reader reads this, and they say, well, that couldn't happen. That's ridiculous. That would never happen. Then you read that, you say, oh, my God. And it builds. So I think the reader will be surprised the first third of the book. By the end of the second third of the book, you'll be frustrated and probably mad.
What ended up happening with that case?
Heath ended up serving 4 days, time served. He was given probation for a year.
4 days?
4 days, yeah. That was the time served. The prosecution wanted him jailed for 5 years.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What gets me is do they not understand that not only we're responsible for the rounds that come out of that weapon, but we're responsible for that weapon.
Right.
So if he's being picked up, being thrown out of the bar, and his service weapon is on the floor, it's paramount that he picks that up. He's responsible for that.
That's the only thing to do.
Exactly. You can't just sit there, oh, I'll just let it fall out on the floor.
Oh.
Jesus Christ.
The
Bystanders, even the security can pick that up.
prosecution made a big deal of the fact that his regulation said he's not to drink while carrying a gun. In other words, you can't go out and have alcohol with your lunch while you're carrying a gun. That is a violation of a regulation. It's not against the law.
Yeah, but he's still responsible for that
Right.
firearm.
He's
And
not inebriated.
right when he was a young officer, Border Patrol, when he started, his supervisor tried to break a fight up in a bar and was stabbed and killed.
Trying to break a fight up.
And he said, I will always carry my gun because I don't want to be that guy sitting in a McDonald's when somebody starts shooting.
Absolutely.
And he always limited his drinking when he did drink. So I could see where people would say, well, you violated that rule, but that's not the law. And I don't think the judge or the prosecution had a great idea of police work and how it works. In fact, his defense attorney said, you need an expert on your side to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they didn't, they argued that I shouldn't even be able to testify. In the appeal, the attorney for his appeal, one of the reasons she appealed is I was not allowed, my testimony was limited. In other words, and the appellate court said that while he should have been allowed to testify, I should have been allowed to testify. My testimony wouldn't have made any difference. Therefore, it doesn't matter that he was found guilty.
Wow.
Now, they didn't even know what I was going to testify to.
Right.
And when you read something like that, you say, they're on the wrong road and they're speeding because they don't want to be late. And they're telling me I don't know where I'm going.
Right.
It's like, how does the court justify that? Some of these other cases in here, I'm glad it worked out that I have these other cases in here, because there was a guy in Georgia. I'll give you one example. He's in jail for murder and he's on death row. A gun that they confiscated from his mother's house was tested against bullets taken from dead bodies. And they said the bullets came from that gun. 15, 20 years into it, his attorney petitions the court to retest the gun and the bullets. And he hires 3 experts to do so. The experts said, these bullets not only did not come from this gun, not all the bullets came from the same gun. And that's the principal evidence that convicted this man.
Right.
So he's still got to wait, I want to say it's 9 or 10 years before they order a new trial for him.
That's ridiculous.
Well, what happened? You're in jail after the principal evidence against you is dismissed, and the state's attorney holds you there. There's a case in Baltimore where a man walks into the police station and says, and he has a knife, and he said, this is the knife that killed that college student the other day. And he wanted the reward money. And he said his neighbor, that's where he got the knife from. So they locked the neighbor up, and they noticed this man that came in had blood on his jeans. So they locked the neighbor up. And then a jailhouse informant said, yeah, he told me about it. So they go to trial. And they're going to use the jailhouse informant and this guy. Well, the first time this guy gives his statements, it's kind of funky. So they tell him he's got to go again. Well, the second time he says, well, I was there, but I didn't do the deed with him. I was just there with him. Well, now they charge him.
Right.
Thank you for talking. Appreciate it.
And he only came in because he wanted the money.
Right.
Right.
So 19 years later, DNA exonerates both of them. They didn't do it.
Wow.
They offer this informant an Alford plea, which means if I get tried again, I would be found guilty, but I'll be let out of jail. And he accepts it. The guy he ratted out who didn't do anything said, no, I'm staying. I'm going to be found not guilty. 2 years later, they release him finally instead of retrying him. And he sues the city, and I think he got the largest amount ever up to that time. But they knew they had no case on him for 2 years.
Right.
2 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this or not. I don't have the guy's name with me, but there was a young man who was arrested, and I want to say it was for stealing a backpack in New York.
Oh, yeah.
You know that case? Mm-hmm. He's in jail for 4 years.
For stealing the backpack.
No, he never tried.
He was never tried.
Wow.
Wait, didn't he
Jay
die in?
they did.
Didn't he die in Rikers?
Yeah.
He committed suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was in jail, and they kept bringing him back to court, offering him plea deals, and he said no.
Yeah.
You know, it's there. I have all these cases in the back. When you read these cases, it upsets you. You think, how can this be?
From Brooklyn, right?
And you can see a pattern where sometimes they're looking for somebody to arrest, and they try to make a case around them. One case, a woman is charged with setting fire to her mobile home, and her son dies in the back bedroom. The ATF and the state fire marshal in this state said there was accelerant from the back bedroom all the way out to the living room. So she insists she's innocent. She didn't start this fire. Her defense attorney has an expert that says, well, there would be accelerant in the living room because she had one of those kerosene heaters there.
Okay.
You know. So she's in jail, I think, for 11 years. And the Innocence Program in her state takes up her case, and they actually ask the ATF, they want to see the paperwork.
Wow.
The paperwork says the accelerant's found in the living room. Doesn't say anything about the bedroom or the hallway. They lied on the stand.
Wow.
So she spends 11 years in jail. Now she's released. But there's nothing done to these people that lied. Nothing.
BB's pops.
Huh?
One of their partners, pops did. Remember, did 20 years. BB.
Yeah.
Did,
Yeah. Yeah.
Same
during
thing
the
with
Christmas.
yeah,
big
actually.
Christmas time.
Yep.
You know,
He was
Giuliani was the prosecutor at the time.
he was a chef, and there was an officer that I believe was just killed, and the witness was like, "Oh, it was him. He was just throwing out the garbage," and he did 20 years. Just came home.
Well,
Found innocent.
when I was looking,
Came home, what, like 4 years ago now, right?
No, like a year ago.
No, more than a year.
when I was looking for these
Pop's
cases,
been home like a year.
when I was looking for these cases,
Like a year and a half. Maybe.
I thought this is going to be hard to find cases that are similar to Heath's. So you really do a lot of research with it.
Right.
And I found so many, and this is in the book, that I said if you put all these together, you would have a set of encyclopedias.
Wow.
Then on top of it, you have enough cases each year where you could do the next edition. And if you take all the innocent programs and you fund them completely, the Mid-Atlantic, I think, is funded for $15 million, something like that. And you got all these innocent people out of jail, you still wouldn't resolve the problem. The problem is not the innocent people in jail. The problem is how they got there.
Right.
Okay.
Because if you take all the innocent people out of jail and you don't stop them from coming in, you're just filling in behind you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like filling up a tub of water and you're taking it out at one end and he's putting it in at the other. That's what you have to do. And that's going to take some reform. The people that testify falsely,
Absolutely.
you know, that kind of stuff.
Accountability as well for that.
Right. There's a case.
How do you combat that?
That's what I was going to.
You know, like
ego.
It's
Like-
the one of the biggest ones that I can remember was the Mike Brown case. All those people said that the officer did whatever he did, and they did cell phone trackers, and they weren't even in town.
Did you read Eric Holder's report on Michael Brown shooting?
Right.
Eric Holder did this very lengthy report, and he had witnesses that testified that the officer, and I can't remember his name, anyhow, just shot him.
Yeah.
And the one witness that said this was like a block away on the other street.
Correct.
And then a block the other direction on another street, a witness said, no, it was justified. In other words, they had witnesses that just, I don't know if they just made shit
It's
up.
coming
or
out of the
came-
woodworks for
right.
shit.
Yeah.
But they also had a lot of people driving by.
Correct.
And the officers, I mean, well, that was a big deal. Hands up, don't shoot. So you figure, okay, that's really bad. Well, then that report justified the shooting. Not that it was a good shooting. It just justified the shooting. The report about the department was horrific. I told my wife, I said, look, I know that there are prejudiced and bigoted people out there, but I never thought a whole department would be that way.
Yeah.
They had a budget of like $6 million and the city gave them like $4 million, and they had to make up $2 million or whatever it was through fines. There was a guy in a park and his name was Michael. And it must have been one of these parks where you work out with gym stuff, and an officer says, "What's your name?" He said, "Mike." He said, "You got ID?" And he says, "Yeah." And he shows him as Michael. And he gave him a ticket for giving him a false name. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot of shit show departments out there now.
Well, I said to my wife, I never thought a whole agency would be like that. And then on top of it, it can't be the only agency in the country like that.
No, absolutely not.
Now, rethinking that a little bit, there's probably officers on that department that just won't say anything.
Because they're scared.
Right. And then when George Floyd was killed, it made me smile, not his dying, that the fact that the chief of that department and the citizens marched together in protest, of Ferguson. So you can see progress, you might say.
Yeah.
Right.
A case in the book, it's not one of the cases, but it's in the last chapter. They always talk about why police don't rat the other police out. Why don't they say anything? Well, this officer, she is on an arrest, and the arresting officer is choking the guy with a chokehold. And the department has a policy, no chokeholds. She tells him to stop. He doesn't stop, so she intervenes. And there's a big fuss over it. So when she gets back, she reports him as using a chokehold. He reports her as causing a dangerous situation by intervening at his arrest. And they end up charging her. She loses her job.
Good. She got a phenomenal lawsuit now.
Well, 15 years later.
Wow.
15 years later, she gets her back pay and her retirement. Yeah. So for 15 years, what do the other officers in that department think?
Right.
Yeah, that's horrible.
But that's the way to do it.
That's horrible.
That's wrong.
But let's face it. If you're a whistleblower, that doesn't have a good connotation with it.
Yeah.
We want people to blow the whistle.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the government, police, I don't care what it is. You want people to say this is wrong.
Yeah.
You see two whistleblowers.
But you don't hear a whole lot of good stories about whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Two of them ended up missing recently.
But that's what. But
two of them ended up missing recently.
But that's what we were even saying. Even growing up in our communities, it's just frowned upon. You either suck it up, you fight, whatever's done is done behind closed doors. So like even with my aunt, she was an old school Baltimore City police officer. Would love to have her come on. She's been retired for a long time. Like
doesn't matter.
Some of those conversations where they went out back because you tried to embarrass me when we were out there to stand for. So I'm gonna straighten you out because my family could lose everything. You see what I'm saying? But
her family lost everything for 15 years.
That's what I'm saying.
Did the right thing.
How many people in the community going to do the right thing too, and then their house gets shot up? So that's what he's saying. Like it's
There's so many messed up police cultures out there.
Yeah.
So
and they still exist.
So is this like being that you're saying that we're all saying this? Is this just a human thing?
I think you have to change the culture, but you can't take every officer now and sit them down and give them a new culture lesson. You have to start at the recruiting level and that training level, and it has to be endemic in the agency.
But you still got to get rid of the old school shit stains because they're still going to be there.
Yeah, but if you put all your energy into that and not growing the new, and there's a woman in Baltimore City, this is many years ago, and she called the police because her neighbors were a drug dealer. They set her house on fire and killed her and her 6 kids.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, so do you think any of the other neighbors are going to call them?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Is it a human thing?
Look,
it's cultural.
I will quote Tommy Raskin.
What, in American culture?
And that is sometimes it's hard to be human. We're all... I could say something that offends you that I don't even know I said it. Mm-hmm. Well, I know I said it, but I don't know that it offended. You know what I mean?
Right.
In other words, we all have heard things to say, what the fuck?
And to me, it's a joke.
Yeah.
Laugh.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember having a saying that I could teach a rock with lips how to shoot a gun. And, well, I figured I was good at it. And an instructor came to me and said, that sounds racist. I said, what?
A rock with lips? God damn.
I said, So Charlie Lester, rest his soul, he was one of my instructors. I mean, he was outstanding. I said, Charlie, tell me the truth. Does that sound racist to you? And he said, no, but I stopped using it, because apparently this other guy thought that it might sound that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you wonder, how many other things do you say
Yeah.
That offends people.
that offend? Yeah.
That offends sensitive people.
Was he a rock collector?
Right.
Charlie,
What's going on?
He have a rock tattoo on his ass or something?
Charlie Lester was from Texas. His girlfriend was from Philadelphia, and he was like 6'3".
She was the alpha
230
of that
pounds,
relationship.
and he had like a 34-inch waist, and he ate like he had 9 rectums. I mean,
wow.
he just ate and ate. He's working at the Forestville Barrack, and when I was down there, he was in my work group, and he lived by himself, and he was having Thanksgiving dinner with his neighbor, this elderly lady, and she said, Charlie, aren't you going to Philadelphia? And he says, no, my girlfriend's going to New York to see her parents, and she'll be in transit, so I'm just going to have a turkey here. He said, Charlie, you buy a turkey, I'll cook it, and we'll have dinner together. He said, okay. So Charlie says he buys a 22-pound turkey. And the guys in the shift says, well, what's she going to eat, Charlie?
Charlie big ass going to eat everything.
I mean, he 6'2", 6'3", 230 pounds, 34-inch waist. I mean, and we worked night shift out at Liberty Range, and we would get half a fried chicken for dinner. And I said, you want chicken, Charlie? He said, I want 2. I said, 2 halves? He said, no, Sarge, 2 chickens.
Wow.
Damn. He could put it away.
And then he could shoot his ass off too, huh?
Yeah, he was good. He was one of those people that you really admired. I'll just say that. And I met a lot of people like that. Very fortunate.
May he rest in peace.
Oh, he's no longer with us?
No, he passed away.
Oh, God bless his soul. Damn.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to hear that.
One of the things that we always talk about, and from hearing from them, is training. How do you, like, I know with our military folks, when I worked on base, it's mandatory. It's kind of, and even when you're promoted, you have to be a certain weight, certain this, that, and the fourth to make rank. How do you feel about that one? And then how would you implement it if you would implement it?
Training standards are done by POST. It's called Police Officer Standards of Training. That's an acronym, POST. And each state has different standards. When I went through the State Police Academy, and this was 1968, the academy was 6 months long. It was the second longest police academy in the country at the time. And a lot of academies at the time were only 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Now, most of the good-sized academies are at least 6 months, some of them 7 months. In other words, so you see an advancement in the training. But there needs to be an audit and an advancement for that. What you have today is you have a gun culture where everybody's carrying a gun.
Yes.
And you had that airman just recently shot. I don't know what state that was in. He came to the door with a gun, and the officer just shot real quick.
Yeah, that was in Florida. Yeah, the airman.
Now, let me ask you
young
that.
guy, 23 years old, I think.
Yes. Now, I think it's going to be hard to prosecute that officer. But at the same time, if you took the victim, the 23-year-old you say he was, and you made him a 35-year-old white woman, would that officer have shot that fast?
I
don't know.
You see what I mean?
All he saw was that gun.
Right. Well, we do simulator training. We had simulators even back in the 80s at State Police. In other words, we could put a film up and troopers would interact with it. And one of the common things that you hear with new recruits was, well, he had a gun. And I said, well, you don't shoot people just because they have a gun.
Mm-hmm.
He said, why not? I said, well, if you went to West Virginia, you'd shoot everybody. You can't just shoot somebody just because they have a gun.
Yeah.
There has to be a threat.
Right.
An imminent threat at that.
Right. And today, we have such a strong fear of crime, and yet crime is actually down, that people arm themselves in their home. And look at all the home-related shootings we've had in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Guy knocks on the door. Guy shoots through the door and kills somebody. Some young women pull up in a driveway. A guy comes on his porch and shoots him. I mean, I don't know how you address that in training per se, except to address it that way.
It's hard because every person's threat level is different. That officer's threat level obviously was different because he bust off and didn't even say drop the gun. He immediately shot him.
Mm-hmm.
So, every officer's different. I don't know what he's been through in that particular area with those calls. I don't know,
Yeah.
like
They were serving a warrant.
what are the gun laws in Florida? Are they open carry?
Mhm.
Is he familiar with that area? Has he come across some people in that area where it has been? I mean, so it's a lot that goes with that call. No, it shouldn't have ended like that. No, but different officers would have taken different steps. They wouldn't have just had shot.
Do you think that just on the face of it, that officers should be trained that when you go to the door, expect somebody almost to come to the door with a gun in their hand? Because that's what people are doing.
Well, I would say for the beautiful department that we work with, since day one, we were taught a specific tactic on how to approach a door,
How to address doors.
how to address doors.
Right. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're going to the unknown.
Right.
When I was teaching with the Valor program, we were teaching research that we conducted about violent encounters between police. And the first study, Killed in the Line of Duty, that went with that, we interviewed offenders that had killed police officers and the family and other officers of how they got killed. We're trying to reduce these violent encounters.
Wow.
And part of that, after the 3 studies that we put together, we were teaching, I would do a list of people that assault police.
Mm-hmm.
And on the top of that list was an 84-year-old white man. He shot and killed his wife, called the police. The police responded. He shot at them, and they shot him. He didn't die. But that was a suicide by cop attempt.
May I ask what state?
Yeah,
What state?
that was out west.
Out west. Okay.
Yeah, there was another one out west where a 61-year-old woman called the police. They responded. She came to the door shooting at them, and they shot and killed her. And the newspapers the next day said the police shot grandma. And what happened was she was a nurse, and she had not worked for 4 or 5 years taking care of her sick husband. And then he died. And she was in financial straits, and I guess she just didn't see any. And that's, to me, is a suicide by cop.
That was a way out.
You have a 80-year-old woman in the South, and they're coming to lock her 60-year-old son up, and she shoots at police.
Wow.
So when we have this idea in our mind that the guy with the lightning bolt tattoos and the bandana and all this shit, that's not the people that actually assault and kill police. There was one case, I have a film on that one, where a national high school honor student goes off to college, and he wants to be an urban guerrilla. And you think, urban guerrilla, what's that? Rob from the rich, give to the poor? Well, no, it just means you rob a 7-Eleven type stuff. So he buys a used gun, and he gets a vest, and he's home one weekend, and he tries it, and it doesn't do very well, and he feels bad about it. He says he felt dirty. But he said he had too much invested, so the next time he comes home for a weekend, he does it, and he's successful. The clerk calls in right away, and he got a really good description because this kid looks like he's 17, maybe 140 pounds. And the police officer approaches him right away, says, I'm out there. And when the backup gets there, the police officer's dead in the middle of the street, gun still in the holster, and his car's gone.
Wow.
Now, if you saw this kid, you would say, okay, because now he's got a beard. He's being interviewed in jail a couple years later. And Ed says to him, well, how tall were you then? He said, 5'6", 5'7", 130 pounds, 140 pounds. Do you think the officer approaching him thought, he's not a threat?
Right.
He's just a kid. Now, the last story I give in that scenario here of the people is there's a drug raid. And this is an East Coast city. And when the officers go in, this little kid runs in front of one of the officers. Well, the guy with a shield holsters his gun and grabs the kid up and holds him behind the shield in case they're shooting. So afterwards, Steve, the leader of this team, goes over and says to the kid, look, we weren't going to hurt you. We don't want to hurt you. The kid says, I know, you were coming from my daddy. That's why I was going to get my gun. What do you do if an 8-year-old kid starts shooting at you?
Wow.
And that's why I say that the majority of officers out there are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
They're trying to do the right thing. And sometimes they make mistakes. They're human. But you have to start at the bottom with the culture and work your way up. You change it slowly, just like you raise a good person.
Right.
You know, you want to raise a good officer. You start with that foundation and you go forward that way. But, and I still believe we have to address the gun culture with training.
Well said. I agree.
You know, I don't have all the answers, but you can see just in the last couple of years the people shot at doorways, and if there's any indication past this prologue, you can imagine what's going to happen from now on.
Right.
You know.
So what advice do you give to young officers that are just getting on, and even the veterans that got a few more years to go?
I say just do your job and do it well. Enjoy it while you can, literally. You're making a difference. I've been asked a couple times about different circumstances I've been in and stuff like that, and what I like best about the job. And I can tell you I've gotten some very nice letters from citizens for very minor things that they really appreciate what you did, like changing a flat tire, stuff like that. I was riding down here, and I passed a spot in the Beltway that in 1969 I was going around. I was in intelligence then. I mean, I looked kind of raggedy, and I was driving an unmarked car. And this is Christmas Eve. I want to say it's Christmas Eve. It may have been Christmas Day, but it's snowing. And there's a lady on the right side of the road on the shoulder. And she's not dressed for being out, and she's a little bloodied. And I pull over, and you could tell she's afraid of me, and I show her my identification. Says, I'm a state trooper, ma'am. And then she's okay. And I get her into the car, and I give her my handkerchief to clean herself up a little bit. And she doesn't live that far from that location. She's hesitant about me taking her home. And she doesn't have anybody else to call. And I said, no. I said, I'm going to take you home.
Did you give her a pat down before you put her in the car?
No. She's like, I'm 22 years old, 23. She's like 50 years old. You know, I'm thinking not a threat.
Right.
I'm thinking domestic violence.
Right.
And domestic violence occurred then, but it wasn't a big topic then. So when I take her home, her husband, I knock on the door, and her husband comes to the door. And I pull out my business card with my name and number on it. And I said, ma'am, this is my card. I says, if anybody touches you, you call me, and I will lock them up. And he's standing right there.
Just so he can hear it.
Huh?
I said, just so he can hear you.
Yes. And about, I don't know, a week, 10 days later, I get an envelope in the mail. And it's a very nice letter. And the handkerchief is all cleaned and pressed.
Wow.
You know, and so many times we do things for people like that you've done them. And you don't know how it, just like I said, there are things you can say that can offend people. You don't know. You don't know how many nice things you've done that people appreciate.
Yeah.
And to be able to serve the community like that as a police officer is a privilege.
Absolutely.
It really is. You get to see a lot of bad things, but you also get to lock a lot of people up.
Right.
I mean, bad people. But if you see all these cases of injustice, well, it's just sad. I don't know how else to put it.
Wow. That was amazing. I thank you for your time, for coming out, man. That means everything.
I thank you. I think there's a whole lot of, I'll end with this. When I was pitching the book, you go to these pitch sessions where you talk to literary agents. And he says, well, do you support Black Lives Matter? I said, sure. And he says, so you don't support the police? I said, it's not a binary choice.
Yeah, it's not a.
Just like we say, we don't see a color, we just see a problem.
I said, I support the police. I don't support somebody that sits on somebody's neck for 9 minutes.
Yeah.
and I support Black Lives Matter, but I don't support anybody that loots or steals from stores. It's that simple. If you break the law, you break the law.
Absolutely.
Yeah, two truths could exist at the same time.
Yes. Yes. Well, you think of it like this, the history of this country. The first election where people could vote, not just people in Congress, but people, was when Andrew Jackson was elected.
Right.
Now, that was just white males that owned property.
Right.
The first time a black man could vote, if he really could vote, theoretically was 1865.
Mm-hmm.
The first time a woman could vote was 1920.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had the Civil Rights Act of 65 to ensure people could vote.
Right.
And they still can't vote. So the idea that we're all created equal is aspirational.
Mm.
And I still think we have a long way to go.
That's deep. Wow.
Yeah. Whoa.
That's deep. Well said. That's the first time I ever heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one just,
Wow.
that one hit different. Yo.
Yo.
Because once you hear that and you see it, you're like, oh shit.
Even after all these years, it still is aspirational because we're not there yet.
No,
I'm not there yet.
And people try to paint us into a monolith, and I hate that. Like you said, you can't, if you one thing, oh, so then you just don't like. It's like, nah, I can.
that happens a lot.
Yeah, I can actually like the Knicks, and I can also like the other team they're playing against.
Right.
It's just like the play. It's like, no, you only like this. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
You can do that, but it's not me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Bohrer. That means everything. I appreciate you. Your body work is amazing.
Appreciate it, sir.
Oh, we do have a happy hour coming up June 4th. And Canton. Bring the missus if you want free drinks. Telling you. Food. Come on out, relax for a little bit.
I will think about that.
So our first responders, it's everybody. Just come out and enjoy. Have a great time. But thank you once again. I appreciate
for
you
your time.
for taking time out to come and
I appreciate the invite.
bless us.
I hope you like the book.
Where could the
Here it
book
is.
be found at? Where can we purchase that? Amazon?
Amazon, any just about any bookstore will order it for you.
Nice.
It's a light read.
I'm doing
quick.
a book signing at Barnes & Noble in Frederick on the 18th
Okay.
of this month.
Nice.
And
We'll
then,
let Donato and them know over there.
Yeah. Because he's in West Virginia.
Yep.
Yeah.
We was with Frederick.
Yeah. Frederick City.
Yeah, it's a quick read. Pick it up.
All right, my people, Judicial Soup by our brother, Mr. Shannon Bohrer. Amazing man. Phenomenal. Listen, I don't got much to say no more. That was perfect.
That was
And well said.
that was very
Very insightful.
seriously.
Wow.
Really appreciate that.
Dre, what you got?
Peace and love.
Triple C.
Blessed are the peacemakers.
Folks, we love you. We appreciate you. Don't forget Happy Hour. Come join us June 4th. Come see Charlie. Come see your boys. Come see everybody. Let's have a good time. I'd like to thank Mr. Shannon for coming out, telling us his insight from his, 42 years total of experience in policing. And it's paramount, man, because look at him, 77, looking good, just enjoying life.
He made it out.
Dropping gems everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
So thank you. We love you. Be safe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We'll see y'all next week. Awesome.
I will.
And opinions expressed on the Silverback Chronicles podcasts are those of the hosts, producers, and/or the guest appearing on the program. They do not reflect the views and opinions of the federal, state, or local government. This includes but not exclusive to the Department of Defense, Homeland, and the Baltimore City Police Department. the Silverback Chronicles podcast with Dre, Big H, and Triple C. Hit the subscribe button, like and comment.